Okay, we're rounding out this chapter. By the way, if you didn't already figure it out, we have a test on the first day you come back on Tuesday. Okay? The test covers a couple of chapters, chapter 1 and 2, plus the information on viruses. So, you got that test, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay. Basically, I want you guys... basically, here's where we're at in the chapter. This is it. And we've been talking about 4 major macromolecules. 4 big molecules that pretty much make up everything that's living. And we're on number 4. We've already covered carbohydrates. We've already covered lipids. We've already covered proteins. We've gone into the uses for those things. Finally, nucleic acids. Okay. This is the one people seem to not be able to remember very well or understand very well. So we're going to kind of cover the basics here. Technically speaking, the nucleic acid is any macromolecule that contains those elements: H, O, N, C, and P, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, and phosphorus. All right, well, that's a pretty general description. I'll get more details in a minute, but nucleic acids are definitely polymers, and what that means, again, is they're made up of repeating units. In other words, in order to get a nucleic acid, you gotta link a bunch of little things together. Remember, when we were talking about proteins, you had to link a bunch of amino acids together to make a protein. Just like you're gonna need to link a bunch of these things together to get a nucleic acid. What is that thing you're gonna need to link together? It's called a nucleotide. There's a lot of big words to represent nucleotide or nucleic acids. Okay. I'll draw a picture of a nucleotide in just a second, but what a nucleotide is made up of are 3 things: sugar, a phosphate, and a nitrogen base. Okay. Okay. So here's a picture. I've taken those 3 words and I drew myself a nucleotide. Okay, now here's where everybody gets a little confused. This thing right here, the whole thing right here, is a nucleotide. Now the nucleotide has 3 parts to it. But in order to make my nucleic acid, I've got to hook a bunch of these things up with other things with another nucleic. See, now I'm getting confused. Let me start over. In order to make a nucleic acid, you've got to hook up a bunch of these nucleotides to themselves, and they hook up in a pretty kind of cool way. Let me show you what I mean by that when I show a picture. Hold on, I'll put this back up in a minute. Don't look at the words, just look at the picture. That's a picture of DNA. Don't look at the words. I don't care about the words yet. You saw that a nucleotide is made up of 3 things: a sugar, a phosphate, and a base. They're all going to hook up to create this. They're all going to hook together and make this shape. It's really weird. The sugar and the phosphates kind of looks like a ladder, doesn't it? Like a twisted ladder is what they say. It's what DNA always looks like. The sugars and the phosphates are going to form like the sides of the ladder, the rungs of the ladder. So it alternates: sugar, phosphate, sugar, phosphate, sugar, phosphate, because they're all joined together. Those bases, those nitrogen bases, are going to form basically the steps of the ladder. We're going to go into more detail about this in another couple of chapters when we learn more about DNA. But for now, I just kind of want you to know that when it comes to one of the major molecules in living organisms, that's definitely it. Okay. Let's kind of finish this out. Oops, we're almost done. There are 3 different types of nucleic acids. There are 3 major types of nucleic acids. you can tell they all kind of look the same. Now they're a little bit different, but they all look the same. DNA, the nucleotides of DNA and RNA look almost identical. There are differences from what you see. One big difference is this thing right here, which is a sugar. By the way, how can you tell these are sugars?
Oath.
The oaths on the end. Very good. Okay, good. Who said that? Oh, very good. So I didn't even need to tell you that this was a sugar. You should have been able to figure that out with just the os on the end. Anything that rhymes with gross is a sugar. Anything that ends in ase is a enzyme. Yeah, Terry.
Why does it say deoxyribose? I thought that deoxyribonucleic acid or something has something to do with DNA, but not like sugar.
No, this is actually, that's a good question. The sugar part of DNA is called deoxyribose. They get the name, the actual big long word for DNA is a deoxyribonucleic acid.
Yeah.
That's where they get the N and the A come from the fact that these things are nucleic acids. The D comes from the type of sugar it has.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's where they get the D for DNA is just by the type of sugar it has. Good. Same with RNA. You can see where they got the R in RNA because it has the sugars are almost identical. That's why they actually both look like little houses, but they're slightly different. So it's just ribose. Okay, so that's where they get the R in RNA is just by the name of the sugar. Okay, obviously I didn't label it, but these circles are phosphates. Those are the same exact on both molecules. These little rectangles, they're not rectangles, they're just symbols used to represent the molecules. Those things are the bases. And in DNA, and we're going to learn this in the future, this little triangle can be one of these 4 types of bases. Now these letters are just stand for chemicals. This A stands for adenine, the T stands for thymine, the C, you'll see. In fact, that picture I showed you, they're basically, you can see the thymine, guanine, they have the big long words, but I just abbreviated them here, A, T, C, and G. For now, I'm not worried about you knowing that. But you do see a difference in DNA and RNA. Look, the letters aren't the same. DNA has these 4 types that could be here. In RNA, they don't have a T. It's replaced by a U. Stick that information in the back of your brain. That'll be useful one day. Then you have this molecule, ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Triphosphate. What does tri mean? Bam, bam, bam. This thing has 3 phosphates. By the way, keep that in the back of your brain because that is really important to the way ATP works. It has a sugar here. I'm not concerned you know what that sugar is. And it does have a base here, and I'm not really concerned you know what that base is either, but just the fact that it is a nitrogen base. That's a sugar. That's a nitrogen base. These are your phosphates. Okay, don't get confused. DNA and RNA kind of go hand in hand. Look, their structures are almost identical, and they kind of have the same function. Well, you guys know what DNA does, and RNA does kind of the same thing. It stores genetic information, genes, all those things you get from mom and dad kind of deal. ATP doesn't do anything like that. Totally different job. But I find it kind of weird that even though ATP does a totally different job, it looks almost identical to DNA and RNA. It's very strange, but that's the way the world works. By the way, ATP is basically energy in a cell. So this thing has to do with having energy, or whether or not your cells have energy, and those have to do with basically your genes. But they're all nucleotides, all 3. So that's it. Yeah, that's it with the chapter, actually.